Hey friends, I wanted to do a little introduction to this video because I actually wasn't going to post it. Um, so this is a quick walkthrough unboxing of the Arcana Playing Cards, which is not the reason I wasn't going to post it, but I use the deck for a sample reading of my favorite spread right now, kind of in a quick, by my standards, quick response to the spread love tag. But I hated I hated the reading I did, and you can see me in the video like criticizing it at the end and um, talking about the direction that it could have gone in if I had done it better. But then, as I was thinking about it, I decided that's actually the reason to post it. In part, just to remind folks that we're not perfect and that we don't always do beautiful readings. And in part because the thing that I didn't like the reading or about the reading was that it wasn't super practical by my standards because it actually asked more questions than it answered. But as I was going through the day, I realized sometimes that's the answer. You know what I mean? Like sometimes that's the thing. Um, we don't always get an easy response. And the question that the reading asked was, "What do I need? What should I do next?" Or like, "What's the next thing?" And in that regard, those questions answered that initial question, which is you have to ask yourself these questions before you make another plan. So in that regard, it is a practical answer. It's just not a satisfying answer because sometimes we want to know what the right thing to do is. Sometimes the right thing to do is not easy. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, you should stay or you should go or whatever the case is. Um, so after thinking about it for a while, I decided, you know what, I am gonna go ahead and post this for that reason because ultimately the question that was asked was answered. Um, and the lesson there is a couple things. One, um, ask questions carefully because if the question is that open, the reading may be that open, and this one was. It responded with questions. Um, the other thing is that I think that readings do give us what we need, and the questions that the reading asked were important. And Camelia Elias in her book talks about evidence, and she says, find evidence in the reading for what you're saying. And this reading to me was so much about evidence. Like over and over again, we got the same message of idealism and practicality, of settling and not settling, of coming back to the central issue of the structure and the system of the Hierophant. The reading provided nothing but evidence, and that's one reason why I really love this spread. So I'm going to post the video, or I am posting the video, flaws intact, because ultimately, after thinking about it, I think it did answer the question that was asked. Maybe my response wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but it was the answer. That's not justification either. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and also one thing I think that's important to know about tarot is that what the reading tells us in that moment is important. Yoav Ben-Dov in his open reading book talks about how there's no accidents in the cards, and I think in a way there's no accidents in readings. There have been times where I misinterpreted like the Kabbalistic numerology of a number. I said, I don't know, I said 3 was wisdom. And I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head kabbalistically, but let's say I said it was that, and it's actually beauty. See, and I don't even know because it's been a while since I've thought about it in those terms. But let's say I misinterpret the 3. I drew the 3 and misinterpreted it for that reading, and in a way that interpretation, though that may not be what the 3 means traditionally, it was what was necessary in that reading at that moment. And so I think, whoops, sorry, dinner's in the oven. What was necessary was said, even if the interpretation was wrong. So what happens in the reading, what happens in the moment, um, is more important, I think, sometimes than what's right. So anyway, with those kind of rambly thoughts in mind, here is my quick little unboxing and walkthrough and my demo of the spread that I still wish were more elegant, but that ultimately I realized answers the question that was asked, even though it answered the question with questions, which is one of the most annoying things that can happen. They're important questions, and in order to move forward, they have to be answered. So I hope you like this. Enjoy. Be good. Hey friends, I thought I would do a little unboxing just now, because I got this in the mail and was surprised to discover that it was there, because I ordered this on Saturday, literally this Saturday. It's Monday right now, so they basically shipped it out the day I ordered it, and it landed in my hands just now. So good on this business for being attendant to the needs of those of us with instant gratification requirements. This is the Arcana Playing Cards Tarot, which is not news to anybody. They've been around for a while, but I decided to get them this weekend. Here's an extra card. And I thought I would unbox it and look at it and do another Council of 13 reading. Demo, because I love that spread. And so I figured I would use this as an opportunity to kind of respond to the spread love prompt. Whoops. Trying not to damage the box, because it's a decent box. I love good boxes on cards. Come on. So I got the light edition, because that's the only one that's available right now as a set. You can get the dark edition if you get the expansion pack and the dark playing cards. But in order to do that, you also get the white majors. So I decided to do this. And also, initially I sort of was upset that I couldn't get the dark version, but the more I thought about it, the more I was actually kind of delighted. What a great box. By the idea of the light cards, because that's what a playing deck looks like. Playing card deck looks like. So I don't know the order. So it doesn't look like they're in order of the majors. So let's see. There's the Fool, the Lovers. I actually have not seen a walkthrough of this, by the way. I just know that they exist. I'm not living for that Lovers card, to be honest. It's a little, I mean, the art is beautiful. It's just not how I view that card. It's a pretty Rider-Waite-Smith death. A little Joker. Two Jokers. So those are majors. Now we've got pages. The Magician. The High Priestess. The Empress. These are beautiful in black and white. It's a great Hermit. I actually quite like this Wheel of Fortune. I've talked about how much I don't like Wheels of Fortune. So Justice is 11. Although I honestly don't, I used to get so uptight about that, and I don't even think about it anymore. It's the Devil. This one. So the majors are pretty Rider-Waite-Smith-esque. Are there two death cards? there are. So, whoops. So there's two. There's one that's sort of a close-up and one that's very Rider-Waite-Smith-esque. And we've got this card, and we've got another king, a headless king in his hand. So let's just look at this quickly. So we've got page of spades, which is swords, page of pentacles, which is diamonds, clubs is wands, hearts is cups. So then we've got ace, 2, 3. Now, obviously, they're just playing cards. So these are about as basic as you get in terms of... although they're really quite lovely because you've got the suit, the Tarot Suit Association on the card. So Jack, Queen, and King. So we can put the appropriate page where it goes. And then the ace has the suit, the Tarot Suit Association. So then I have Jack, Queen, and King. So we can take the page there. And then these are the clubs. So the order, they are completely out of order. Whoops. Now they're even more out of order. That's okay, I'm going to shuffle them in a second. So hearts. So this extra, what did I do with him? King of Spades. I've made a giant hash. I don't know that. So there's two Kings of Spades you can choose from. I think I will choose the one without the headless man, although it's quite original, so we'll put that aside. So this looks like a Jack of Clubs as well, a separate one. And then we've got these jokers. So then everything else is the traditional Major Arcana plus cards, plus pip cards, plus plus majors. So I'm gonna do a quick shuffle. These shuffle great. I mean, they feel just like playing cards. So I read in a book, can I see it from here? Tarot and Psychology. I can't read the name from here, but in it he talks about, a normal deck of cards, you can shuffle about 7 times to completely randomize it. And for 78 cards, shuffling it 10 times completely randomizes it. So I generally will begin a reading before I lay out the cards by shuffling 10 times, and then I shuffle again, sort of thinking about the question. If the person's here with me, I'll have them shuffle too. I mean, this shuffle's just like a poker deck. Because it is one. So I'm actually going to do a reading for a friend who has given me permission to put this up. I won't say who it is. I was doing so well before I made a mess. Let's flatten this area out. So this person is asking what they need to do, sort of next step in terms of a creative home. They have sort of a residency, and they're wondering if they should continue with it, and if not, what next. All right, so I am going to lay out the Council of 13 spread, which is from Camellia Elias's book on the Marseille Tarot, which I quite like. I will probably need to increase the distance of the camera, but... Can you see all of that? Almost. Not bad. Alrighty. So, of course, the perfectionist in me wants to tidy this up. So this is right now my favorite spread. I love it. There are no situational positions. You read it in combos. So you start with sort of the center, which gives you your central issue, and you read sort of 1, 2, and 3, and you read 1, 4, and 5, and then you look again at 6, 1, and 7, and 8, 1, and 9, and then you look at 10 and 11 and 12 and 13. You can look at sort of the parentheses on the edges to get an overall spread. So let's talk through this. I love this spread so much. Again, it's from Camellia Elias's Marseille Tarot book. I have a video on this spread, so if you've watched that, you don't necessarily need to stay and watch this. But I always like watching other people interpret. So, and I've never used like pips that are literally playing cards. Although I'm going to read them as though as though I would normally. Although what's interesting, it's hard not to look at the spread and immediately pick up themes as we're supposed to do. And what I know from a little bit of reading about such things is that clubs and spades indicate conflict. They are kind of the weapons. And there's almost entirely clubs and spades. We have 2 diamonds, and then we've got 4 major Arcana cards. So it seems like this is a situation that is sort of mired in conflict, and I think that that's pretty fair. I look at the center card to explore the overall theme. We've got the Hierophant there. This seems really perfect because this is a person who's in an artistic situation where they're in a very traditional artistic environment. They are in a... it happens to be a church, by the way. But it is... It's not church related, but it's a very traditional artistic structure. There's a director, and there's sort of people who report into that director, and the energy around this situation is really interesting because there is a lot of conflict between that sort of central leader figure and those that are in a way subservient to or supplicant to, which makes sense. So the theme of the overall reading, anchored in the Hierophant, is interesting, and also because I know that this person has a strong faith in in the traditions of this particular kind of system, of this artistic environment. You know, they were brought up in it, and they believe in the hierarchical structure. They believe in the necessity for someone to be at the front of a group. You know, someone needs to lead so that nobody sort of, without a leader, I guess, everyone sort of waffles around and wanders. So that really sort of succinctly does confirm the overall situation for the person. So now I look at cards 2, 1, and 3 together and sort of get a message. So we've got the 6 of spades, which is the 6 of swords. We got the Hierophant, of course, and we've got the King of Diamonds, which is Pentacles. So we start with a really kind of beautiful intellectual idea. There is a very balanced energy, intellectual energy. There's definitely a connection, an intellectual connection, and even sort of an idealistic, practical theory behind you know, the way things are supposed to work, a belief in leaders, a belief that practical leadership is possible. So there's like a real idealism surrounding the Hierophant here. We've got this intellectual beauty. We've got 3 and 3, which suggests that, you know, this intellectualism has helped this person mature and get smarter in the world, combined with the King of Pentacles, or the King of Diamonds here, who's kind of the height of practical leadership, right? Someone who's smart with money, because we've got coins in that case, someone who's good at life, someone who's put together, someone who's sort of the ideal balance in leadership. For me, the King of coins or diamonds or pentacles, however you look at it, is the most practical, the most mature, because he's able, and I'm using the pronoun he generically here, he's able to combine all of the elements of life in the way that the kind of symbol of the pentacle does. So we've got this central idea of idealism, and artistic creative integrity, intellectual beauty and stability and growth, maturity, all kind of surrounding this idea of this traditional hierarchy, this traditional system. So that, again, seems to highlight something I very know strongly about this person. I know very strongly about this person. Now, above and below, cards 4 and 5 are both aces. Another sword, a spade, and here we have our first... Oh no, it's not our. We have another diamonds. So our ace of diamonds. So interestingly, again, I'm getting this pull between practical and like intellectual idealism. So I would say that there is the reality that both can be had. This person's probably being torn between like the reality of the practical reality, there is no such thing as idealism, and an intellectual idealism that people can be better and purer. The intent can be purer. In flipping that around, that conflict exists, and you do have to compromise. You know, these two cards have an interesting balance, because with the swords, you've got intellectual purity, but you've also got a tendency to kind of cut through and, again, be conflicted. With the practicality, you have settling, you know what I mean, and less than ideal, but also the knowledge that you've got to settle in life. The aces, of course, signify kind of the purest energy of that. So again, there's this kind of purity about the attitude, which can sometimes be difficult to reconcile, because nothing is pure. There is also a certain naivete about those aces being, you know, at the beginning of a suit. So they may be really pure, but they can also be somewhat naive. So overall, we have this really complex kind of central issue coming around this system. So we've got a lot of idealism. We've also got a lot of conflict. We've got a lot of practicality. So we've got swords and pentacles, or spades and diamonds, both balancing each other out. So I think that that's really, really fascinating. So now we look at the 7 and 8 in addition to the 1. So here we have our second major. We've got Justice, and we've got the Jack, which would be the Knight of Wands. Again, with the Hierophant. So partnered sort of this trio here is really interesting, because in a way it reconnects this sort of desire for purity, and sort of pure intent. Like, things should be just, things should be balanced and right, and there's a right and wrong. And on the other hand, the Jack of clubs, rather, the Knight of Wands, has a really pure, passionate, artistic intent, and the wands are the suit that I associate with artistic ability, artistic passions, and enthusiasms. So again, there's this like really strong need for the institution to be right and pure in its intent, sort of passionately devoted to doing the right thing and making just, correct art and doing it the right way. So this overall kind of need for purity is fascinating to me, because of course that's not how anything works. Yeah, I'm pausing because I'm thinking about the situation that I know about it, and thinking about the initial question, which is, what do I do? The Knight of Wands, or the Jack of clubs in this case, is the kind of person who will go out and look for an organization that does the right thing. So there is an interesting dedication to going out and look, and the Knight is actually riding towards this. So it's like, so one thing to consider is maybe, the Knight will never feel sort of fully ready to do the work until, he has found this sort of organization that is just, and that's sort of intellectually pure, again, to use a term I've used. Coming to the cards 8 and 9, we've got the 4 of spades, swords, and the star, again with the Hierophant. And so in 4 we have stability, but we also have conservatism. And this is something that seems really connected to this overall reading, which is the balance between, like, finding a stable home, finding a stable place, like-minded people, having a foundation, like an intellectual, communicative foundation on which to stand on, but also being somewhat rigid in one's beliefs, and not necessarily given to exploring options. But this idea of hope with the Star card, we return to, again, an idealism. In the Star, we have this sort of peaceful sense of beauty, this sense of romanticism, this idea of the best being possible. And so it's like the deep-held foundational belief, in organizations, that organizations can be pure and good and decent again, and hope for the best. So it's really, again, kind of confirming the same message over and over again. So now we look at cards 10 and 11, again in relationship to the Hierophant in the center card. So we've got the 10 of Wands, or the 10 of clubs, and we've got the Devil. This is a really fascinating combination too. Of course, 10s are completion, having reached the finish line. And the Devil has a lot of connotations, but sort of being stuck to something, in a very literal sense. So there's a sense of like having finished a project with the organization, you're now stuck to it. Or you're addicted to it, or you feel like you can't get away from it. you know, that in order to complete, you need this organization to which you feel really dedicated. Looking at the 12 and 13th cards with the Hierophant, we're looking at the 9 of spades or swords and the 4 of clubs or wands. And so 9 is sort of like a little bit of intellectual exhaustion, mental exhaustion. Communication is kind of like the words aren't there. You know, communicate, like it's just, you've reached kind of a tipping point. You're either going to fall backwards or you're going to push through and reach the end. But again, we have a 4th stability. Here we have passionate stability, creative stability. So we're getting another 4. We're getting another deep sense of belief in our, you know, our system. Butting up against like an exhaustion, like an intellectual exhaustion with this organization. So there's a lot going on here. I think, no, you know, last time I did this, I didn't need to. You can look at sort of these 3 cards and these 3 cards. She puts it in the spread in the book. I call these kind of parentheses just because that's what they remind me of, but that's not necessarily what they are. You know, that's not how she describes it, but they do have a parenthetical feel. So we've got kind of completion, and fire energy, justice, and again, fire energy. So we have stability and completion, and balance and rightness. We've got the devil, we've got the Knight of Wands, and we've got the 9 of swords. So we've got that intellectual exhaustion. We've got the push with the Knight to really like get there, but also this like feeling of being stuck. So this describes the situation decently. Now the question that was asked was, what do I do? And this is, you know, that's not an easy answer to give, necessarily, because the reality of the situation is complicated by, on the one hand, balance of practicality and like accepting, and on the other hand, this sort of overall belief in the systems, and how the systems should work, and like an inability to settle. We have a lot of swords energy, in this case spades. So it's a bit of an intellectual exercise. We've got 4 majors, which indicates, you know, a fair degree of like weight on this person's mind. But by and large, they're all pretty much pips otherwise. So it may not be as dramatic as they think. You know, what do you do? Well, I think, you know, it's an interesting question to answer. I would say, I think what you have to do is you have to reconcile the reality against the ideal. You know, one of the central issues in cards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 was the pull between idealism and practicality. And so I think it's a question of, what are you willing to settle for? You have to kind of identify and ask yourself what you're really willing to settle for, before you make any decisions. You know, if I look at the cards from like a purely cartomantic point of view, we've got so many clubs and spades and sort of dark cards, that it, you know, if we were to look at it from that point of view, we would say that the conflict is sort of surrounding everything, with this base of hope, but it, you know, it's there. Now, the other thing that's interesting is, if I look at, you know, it elementally, we've got far more swords or spades than anything else. We're talking about an artistic path. We've only got 2 or 3, only 3 clubs. Well, how many? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, so it's relatively balanced there. In fact, we've got 4 majors, 4 swords, 3 clubs, and 2 diamonds. I guess the thing that's interesting as well is that there is no emotion here. Emotion is not playing a role in this. So there's every suit but hearts or cups shows up here, and so we've got kind of an emotional deficit. And so I think, that's interesting. The closest thing we have to water is the star. So we have to ask ourselves too, is that a good thing? Is the fact that emotion is largely absent from this a good thing? Or if we are going to have this sort of idealistic purity in our artistic home, do we need more water? Do we need cups or hearts in this reading? There's certainly no love for the system. There's an intellectual connection to it and a belief in it, but not a love for it. So, what do I do? So this is one of those times where it's a really difficult question to answer. What do I do? I think, again, I have to go back to my instinct, which is we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to settle for? And until we do that, we can't really know the next thing. Until we decide and recognize what we're willing to settle for, the next step isn't going to be clear. Are you okay existing in conflict? Are you okay in a situation where there isn't much of an emotional connection? Are you okay having your idealism butted against the practicalities of real life? Can you survive in an environment where, the search for justice and rightness that you believe in is not always going to be at the forefront of the other players' minds? So this is one of those readings, I think, that asks more questions than it answers, because the asking of those questions is key. The reading does a good job of validating the overall, situation. I'm really drawn to this Ace of Swords or Ace of Spades over this Hierophant, and the way that sword is just dangling over the head, and it's resting on the Ace of Pentacles or the Ace of Diamonds. There is sort of like, is something going to cut through and take you to a more practical place? Can you cut through the system that you kind of believe in, and still end up in a kind of balanced, practical place? So yeah, I mean, there's so many questions here. So this is one of those frustrating readings where it doesn't have a clear answer, because it's again, I always talk about tarot as a mirror. I feel like this is a really good mirror of a situation, and what it's reflecting back is, what is this what you want? And if it's not what you want, then you get out of it. You know what I mean? You go hunt for that idealism. And if it is, if you're happy with it, it doesn't look like it's all that bad, but it does look like whatever conflicts are there are going to continue. So the question again is like, what are you willing to settle for? So that's that spread. That's this deck, which I am excited to have and really like. It is a bit confusing, oddly, to sort of describe the reading without cups, coins, swords, and wands. I keep wanting to reach for the one I'm familiar with, but I'm looking at it and knowing that's not the right name for it. So that's interesting. I think it's a beautiful deck too. It's so interesting to see playing cards here, because I'm not used to that. It does in a weird way make me miss the even though like the simple flourishes of Marseille or any other pip deck, this is so straightforward and so simple, that really all I have to reach for is my my understanding of the numerology behind the numbers of tarot. You know what I mean? And the two colors that we're really dealing with, because we've got red and black. So it's interesting. This is something I'm definitely gonna get to enjoy playing around with. But it does make me like envy or miss the joy of even those tiny little flourishes on the Marseille pips. So anyway, I hope this was interesting as always. I'm really a fan of this spread. And again, this is one of those readings that's frustrating because it doesn't say, well, you should do this. But this isn't one of those situations where there's a clear path forward, And so in this case, Tarot is saying, look, this is where you are. What do you want? Are you okay with this? Or what do you want to do differently? And that's annoying sometimes because we want good answers. And I go down a road as a reader too. Like, did I do a good enough job answering the question? The cards were so strongly describing the situation right from the get-go. What I don't necessarily see as advice, although I could approach it again and say, well, you need to get yourself in an artistic situation where you're finding. So yes, to a degree, I think you can revisit, because I'm saying already, like, you need to look for an artistic situation, an artistic home, where you're going to feel intellectually like connected and beautifully connected to others, and have a leader who's mature, who's going to stimulate you intellectually and practically, who is in search of the justice you are. So, you know what I mean? Like, the cards don't change their meaning. What it does, as I'm going through it, is like, yeah, I can read it a different way and look at it in terms of like, go find this idealism, but beware of the tendency towards your conservatism and your tendency to kind of hero worship anyone who's in, if we start looking at different pairs, this connection is interesting. Your tendency to sort of hero worship anyone who is in a leadership position. You know what I mean? So yeah, I probably could have read it better too. But you do what you do. The meaning of the cards don't ultimately change, just the context of them. And I talk a lot about context. And this is one of the annoying things about being a reader, right? Is that, I was having a conversation with someone today about the idea of tarot being language. But unlike language, when you lay out letters, they spell something if you know the language. With tarot, each letter could have 10 different sounds. And that's on its own, and then in combination with each other's those sounds, you have to kind of bring the sounds together. So yeah, at any rate, that's that. I hope this is enjoyable. Be good.